clear for test point 4A.
Copy. Accelerating. On condition.
Clear to maneuver.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On Condition, the Flight Test Safety Podcast. I'm your host, Art Tomasetti. And yes, I am wearing my fleece because it is 59 degrees in Florida today. And for us Floridians, that means winter, so we dress warm. Now, you are in for a real treat with this episode. We are going to start off with a tale of something that happened on a dark and stormy night. And as if that wasn't enough excitement for one episode, we're going to hear about an exciting new tool coming to you soon from the Flight Test Safety Committee that is kind of like AI. Now, let's get started. So just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from this southern port aboard this sailing ship. Now, the weather started getting rough and that mighty ship was tossed. And if it wasn't for the actions of the fearless crew, well, that vessel might have been lost. Now, many of you are probably old enough to recognize that intro to the classic TV series Gilligan's Island. Today, we will hear an equally harrowing tale of high seas adventure. Now, this one doesn't end up with folks stranded on a desert island, left to create a variety of useful things from palm trees and coconuts. Everything except a boat to get them home. No, this adventure ends in something even more spectacular. Lessons learned. So prepare to cast off the bow lines and get underway. So once again, I have the great pleasure to have an old friend join me today. Retired Lieutenant General Mark Wise, who I met back when we were both second lieutenants starting our Marine Corps career at the basic school in Quantico, Virginia.
That's right.
Thanks for taking the time out to be on the podcast. And I wonder if you could just start off with giving us a little bit. I know it's a lot to talk about in your career, but if you could just give us a little bit about your career background.
Turbo, happy to do it. One, great to see you again and great to stay in contact as we have over the years. Talking about other career patterns that are really impressive. Yours would be one of those. So I started out like you after flight school, making my way up through. I became a Hornet pilot. I had a little different track overall in that I was able to really touch just about each of the services. Did a couple of carrier deployments, flying Marine squadrons off of Navy carriers. Did a Air Force exchange flying F-15Cs. With the 58th Fighter Squadron, a lot of interesting experiences, really enjoyed getting to know the cultures and whatnot. But throughout the flying career, of course, was able to have the privilege of commanding at squadron level as well as the group, and then eventually became a wing commander. Interspersed in there, had some really interesting tours with the Warfighting Lab, Deputy U.S. Forces Japan, some really interesting opportunities, and then getting into the requirement side. And then at retirement, I was the Deputy Commandant for Aviation. So that was kind of the culmination of leadership over total service time, a little over 37 years. It was really an amazing privilege.
Right. Yeah, and an amazing career. It's been great to stay in contact with you as well through all that. So usually I start off with talking about aviation stuff in general, and then we get into a specific event or a specific topic. But with you today, because of how we came to come up with the idea for this podcast, let's start with the incident. And it's not a flying incident, but we'll make some connections maybe afterwards. But you are a boat owner of a sailing vessel, and you described an incident that I saw on your social media account that I think is worth talking about for a lot of different reasons. So I wonder if you could all bring us on board with you to that event in your boat.
I would be happy to. So got into sailing about 20 years ago, and one of the reasons was it does have in a very simple sense, similarities with flight. A wing is a sail, just happens to be on its end. Have to learn all the new terminology, but it's an interesting way to view it. So it really resonated. And so fast forward, when we retired, we weren't ready to really slow down. So We actually traveled the country in an RV for about 3 years, and then decided to take the training wheels off and buy a sailboat and sail the oceans for a while. So we bought a 52-foot Lagoon, 2013 Lagoon catamaran, which is a big, big girl. And she's got about a 90-foot mast. And we decided to get a couple of refits in, a little bit of a shakedown cruise, and then we would be off to the races. So in this particular case, we finished the second refit. So we'd been in the yards in and out for a while, and it was time to leave. And the objective was we were going to sail from Fort Pierce, where we were at the time. We were going to sail north to Charleston, which is a long sail. It's about 36 hours-ish, depending on the weather. And then we were going to go around Cape Hatteras and into the Chesapeake, and then that would get us north of the hurricane band for the season. Right. So that's the thought process that started us out. So we get out, and we're about 50, 60 miles off the coast. We're in the Gulf Stream because it turns out, much like the jet stream, it offers all kinds of current to take advantage of when you're northbound.
Sure.
So we're in the Gulf Stream, way off the coast. We're heading north. We'd gotten a late start that particular day. It was the Friday, I think it was the 1st that we actually left. And then, but it was like 6 o'clock in the evening. It wasn't optimum, but the weather was kind of on the edge of the window. And I approach the weather in a very similar way. So I've got multiple weather apps, maritime weather apps, that are very good at predictive analysis, and it looked pretty good initially. So we take off, and we're on our way. And that first night, I have the night watch, and I am looking at the weather in Charleston, and it looks like a front's forming. And there's some radar of the initial formation, but it includes the lightning tracker. And that's the part that really got my attention. It's starting to really amp up in activity. And so at about 4 o'clock the first night, so we're into Saturday now, I decide, nope, not doing that. And I decide that I'm going to just start a divert profile. And my initial divert was to head west back. We were just north of Jacksonville, Florida at this point, and it was to go west back into Fernandina. I know there's different ways to pronounce that beach. And it looked pretty good for about 4 hours, because remember, once we're out of the Gulf Stream, we're probably doing six to 7 knots best case.
Right.
And we get about halfway in, and the Coast Guard pipes up on VHF and says there's weather coming in, and it's going to go from Fernandina Beach all the way up to I think it's Fernandina Beach, actually, all the way up to Brunswick. And it's going to go to 20 miles off the coast, and there's a small craft advisory. And I'm watching on the weather radar, because this is a blue water sailing boat. It's meant to be well off the coast. And the weather radar, I start to see some things form, a couple of cells. And I'm thinking initially, maybe if we are able to skirt through this, we can get to the backside of it and head in. Unfortunately, when the Coast Guard started talking on the radio, it was no longer moving. It was just building and connecting cells. Right. So I was like, that's not going to work. So we come back around and start heading basically southwest. I look at Mayport real quick. It's getting later now. We're into about 6 o'clock in the evening at this point. And then the only thing I see that's clear and viable is St. Augustine. And it is clear at that moment. So we're headed back, and by now it's getting up into the 10 o'clock time frame. Mm-hmm. Still pretty clear, maybe by 9:30, but then, and there's nothing on the radio saying otherwise. Looking at the radar, I start to see these light cells form. And I'm just hoping, because at this point, we're going nowhere fast, and there's really no other options. It's time to get it tucked into a safe harbor. So we're going through, and I'm just hoping that we can get to the backside before this continues to build and it becomes robust. Unfortunately, Mother Nature had a different plan. So I see a couple of cells start to form. Unfortunately, they're not really moving, they're just expanding. And they expand, then they connect. And then I saw the part that really disturbed me, which was in the radar, it looked like a halo around the boat, which really told me it's now starting to form around me.
Right.
And so I really had nowhere to run at that point. And now it's dark. Now it is maybe just peaking 10 o'clock. We're still maybe 12 miles off the coast on a diagonal course back into the channel for St. Augustine. The lightning starts, the rain starts. It's now raining sideways. It's 0 visibility, and the lightning's going off all around. I gather the crew, because I've got 2 guest crew members along with my wife and I, to come up to the helm. We discuss in the eventuality that we're going to have if we have a lightning strike, what are we going to have, which is a magnetic compass. What is the course on that compass? Because there are errors in many of the compasses. So you have to figure out what course you're going to use that compass is going to be accurate to safety. And so we talk about that. And I've still got another person on the helm. I'm just standing with them because obviously I'm the captain and I'm aware of the boat's characteristics. And it wasn't 5 minutes later that this lightning and 0 visibility turned into a big light show, one of which we think hit the mast. It's really hard to tell when you're hit by lightning as to where it hit. You're just glad it didn't hit you.
Sure.
So it turns out when you have a 90-foot lightning rod in the middle of a flat surface, you tend to be attractive to Mother Nature.
Yeah, I would think so.
So the rest of it is interesting because once we were hit, everything went dark in a split second. A couple of other things that happened were very noteworthy, one of which was the right motor died because it's a catamaran. So it's 2 motors. Right motor or starboard motor dies immediately. And in the background, you get the pressure warning that, when you start a maritime motor, you get when you first turn it on, you get the screaming pressure warning until you start the motor, pressure comes up, and then the warning goes away.
Right.
So that thing's screaming this whole time. The port motor is not reacting to the throttles at all. They're electronic throttles, so we knew there was a lot of electronic damage to the boat at that point. So the throttles were not, the engine wasn't responsive to the throttles. Then what also happens on a boat like this is the autopilot controls the rudders. And when that happens, it disengages the actual helm, the wheel at the helm, because it's got control. So you can spin the wheel as much as you want. The reason that's relevant is when the lightning hit and killed all the electronics, it disengaged the autopilot to the rudder. And one of the crew members started to turn the wheel because he saw a little motion in the magnetic compass, and it started to spin faster.
Will the storm get worse? Is the compass actually broken? Will our heroes make it to shore? Answers in the next episode. Same podcast provider, same podcast channel.
Okay, so you're definitely going to want to tune in next month to hear how that all comes out and the lessons learned from it. All right, moving on. You've heard of the HAL 3000. You've heard of Skynet. You've heard of the Whopper. Let's listen to our Flight Test Safety Committee Chairman, Stu Rogerson, talk about a new tool coming from the Flight Test Safety Committee. And I am fortunate to be joined by a good friend of mine, Stu Rogerson, Chia, who is the current Flight Test Safety Committee Chairman. And Chia, thanks for joining. I know you have something you want to update us on that has been a passion project of yours and one of the things you've been trying to do within the Flight Test Safety Committee for a while. So I'm going to turn it over to you and tell us what's new and exciting.
Thanks, Turbo. Appreciate you having me on today. And thanks again for all you do with the podcast On Condition. It's a fantastic resource for our flight testers out there. So I've got a few projects that I'm working on as the chairman of the Flight Test Safety Committee. My number one priority is always the workshops. I think that's the best resource, the best thing we do out there as a committee to improve flight test safety throughout the community. But one of the big things I've been working on is our AI or large language model subcommittee. So as we know, and you've preached this many times, Turbo, we have a bad habit of forgetting lessons learned. We miss them. We can't find them. We do some research, totally miss things that are out there. Maybe they're a bit older in history. Maybe they're just a more obscure system test or something you didn't see, or we just didn't do a broad enough search. But a lot of the lessons learned are already out there, and we miss them all the time.
Right.
So what I wanted to do is to harness some of the new technologies out there. Well, they call it artificial intelligence, but it's really not. It's just a really sophisticated pattern recognizer. But using that capability to dig deeper into the data we have, so that we can go in and actually find those lessons learned, those resources that we would miss as a normal professional just digging around looking for things. It helps our graybeards who just forget things and can't find stuff anymore. And it empowers the young guys to be able to go, the brand new folks to the community, to be able to find more things that they would never know to even look for in the first place.
Yeah.
And if you look at how large language models work, they recognize patterns, and then they can do an exhaustive search that humans just aren't capable of. So we wanted to implement that capability into the Flight Test Safety Committee's search engine and using our resources. So I'm going to share my screen here and start off, first of all, with our website that hopefully everyone's familiar with, but sadly, I feel a lot of times people don't realize everything that's out there and available on the website. But as you can see here, there's a few different tabs. There's a workshops tab. There's a search tab down here. But there's all these references and recommended practices that have been collecting here over the years. There's resources and links that are been around for a while. These are all great resources for things that we just keep forgetting exist and don't look at. But one of the things, of course, and my number one priority as the chairman, is workshops. And the workshops, a lot of the folks allow their videos, their presentations to be recorded. Right. But the podcast, the video casts from those are hard to search. This is part of our marching towards a searchable database that we want to use for the large language model. The first step we did was actually create transcripts of all of the video casts. So here's Taylor Oxford from Honda back in Greensboro, did a great presentation on THAs. If I click here, I get a download of the transcript. So this is data that's available now. So if you ever go into the search engine on the Flight Test Safety Committee, you will be able to search for, like, if you search Honda, it would find Honda in here because it knows it's not a keyword maybe associated with the presentation, but it's a keyword. It's a piece of text in the transcript.
Right.
So that's there now. So that's already a big improvement over our search engine from a few years ago. And our plan is to if you type it in here, that's where it will show up under the search link. So we wanted to create that set of data, and that was our first step in building our set of data that we're going to use in the large language model. So we do actually have a working tool now. And I want to, first of all, put a shout out to Ryan Bowers. He's one of the members of the AI subcommittee. I appreciate all the work all the people do, but Ryan is gone above and beyond what everyone else has done and has really invested a lot of personal time into creating this tool. And it's still got a couple of things we're working on. I'm hoping it will go live in the next few weeks or so. We're just waiting for some minor updates. Most large language models, like you do Chat GPT or something, they search its wealth of information across the entire internet. And it's like, hey, I will just go find things for you. We do not want that in the Flight Test Safety Committee because if someone searched stalls testing in the internet, who knows what kind of answers they're going to get. We don't trust any of that data. It has no integrity to it. We want to make sure the data, the resources that we use to provide that answer is only the stuff we approve, our curated data. Right now, if we go back to that workshop page, back to the Flight Test Safety Committee page, all of those resources, all of those links, all of those video cast transcripts are the data that we provide. So it's only looking through that, which brings me to the point, if you can think of other items that should be on that list of resources, please, please, please send them in to susan@sctp.org or send it to myself. Let us know, and we can add that really easily to the website.
The more data we have, the more data people have access to.
Absolutely. And it's trusted data, right? That's what we're looking for. So what it does, there's a lot of detailed stuff in here, but essentially the RAG says, I will use a large language model to kind of understand your question, but then I will only search the chunk of data that you provided me to look at. So one of the reasons that makes it actually takes a little bit of time to process every time you use this, because it's only looking at the data you provided it. And then it goes through our stuff and then comes up with an answer. And it's a chat model, right? So, so anyway, this will be up soon. The plan is to have a link under the search engine that you'll open up the database search tool. And you'll also have the original search. And then you'll come in here and you'll have a disclaimer that pops up, just reminding you that this is still a beta tool in testing. Right. And you've got to use your own flight test judgment. This system may or may not recognize like why stalls testing on a turboprop versus a jet engine is different, or underslung wing engines versus tail-mounted engines is different. They may not be able to pull that stuff. Why a turboprop would be different than a jet in other areas. We still need to be a flight test professional and critique it. But anyway, you got your model here. So I'm going to say, hey, tell me about stall testing. It's good. It does take a lot of process because every time it opens this conversation, it says, hey, what's my current set of data? So that's the nice thing is if I come along tomorrow and put a new resource in there, it'll look for that. So here it comes. It will come through and it'll come up with I'm going to scroll it back up. So it jumps you to the bottom and it will say, provided some information in stall testing, stall correction maneuvers, and it will always tell you where it gets it from. This is one of the things that's currently broken, but Ryan's working on fixing. This will turn into a hyperlink, and it will actually take you to the actual original source document. Right. And this is what I really want people to do, is to go in here, see why it says you should go read the source document. But it can go through there. There's also some of the risk management items. It will come up with a whole bunch of information. What I really want people to do right now, and especially those who are what I would regard as subject matter experts in flight tests, I want them to go into this tool once it comes out and spend some time working through it with questions they already know the answer to. Okay. And then giving us feedback on what those answers were like. Anyway, so it's interesting stuff in there. Now, if I could go in here, this is building on the current chat model. So if I was to I want to talk about something completely different. I want to clear the chat history and start over. So I haven't tried this before, but how is turbo important to flight tests? I have no idea what it's going to find. It may turn around and say, I don't know how to answer that question.
I'm preparing myself to video edit all of this out just in case.
Okay, here we go. So what did it come up with? His leadership roles, communication efforts, influence on safety protocols. I'd say that pretty well hits you in the nutshell there, Turbo. Yeah. So that's pretty impressive. Anyway, it's in there because you're in the created resources. So that's where we are. This thing's about to go prime time. It'll be I would recommend, if I was to start learning to use this, I would do a straight search. So go back to that search on the initial, go back here, right under this link and just do a search. Right. Because if I type in, I could type in turbo here, right? Just because it's fun. 50 results found. Right. And it finds turbo and all the things he's talked about. Yeah. But no real mention of why. But when I ask turbo here, I get the reasons why you should go look at these things. But do a side-by-side comparison. And then especially those folks that are subject matter experts, go in here and see what the results are like and provide feedback. But I think this could be a massive step forward in capability to help flight test teams dig up items like this. And that's kind of our first phase. We'll tweak it a little bit. The next thing we're going to get into is we need a replacement flight test safety database. And we're going to try and create a separate tool that does that as well. Be able to find those lessons learned specifically in THAs to replace the flight test safety database. That's kind of the next step now that we've got this up and running. Okay. Maybe it'll all become one thing in the end, but we'll see. But there's a great paper actually that Paul Smith put out recently. Tall Paul. He put it out on LinkedIn. He wrote a little article on where we need to go with AI and for flight test activities, and that's really where we need to go. I think is a great starter for this. So. Okay.
Excellent. All right, Chia. So we'll stay tuned to see when this goes public, and I'm sure we'll get the word out to everybody when that happens. Like you mentioned, looking for people to get in there and play with it and start providing some feedback on how it's working, what they're finding. And even more importantly than that, as you start to see some of the data that it has access to, realize that if you have data that you can help contribute and give us so that that repository becomes even bigger and even better, then we're ready to accept all of that data.
Perfect. Thank you, Turbo. I really appreciate it.
I think that's going to be a fantastic tool. Looking forward to it becoming publicly available. Before we wrap, don't forget to check out this month's edition of the Flight Test Safety Fact. You can find it on our website, or there's a link in the show notes that'll take you right to it. And I want to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season. We'll see you in 2026. And until then, be safe, be smart, and be ready to be on condition.
On Condition is brought to you by Time to Climb. Motivate your team to succeed, accelerate toward your goals, and elevate to a higher level of performance. On the web at www.time2climb.com.